with a bike, run, and bike to test their fitness, but also their racing tactics. Alongside me, as always, is Sarah True. Sarah, you excited for some fast racing?
Absolutely. So last week, week 2, was a nail biter that really kept us on the edge of the seats, and I am looking forward to similar racing this week. Should be really fun to watch. Painful fun.
Yeah, absolutely painful. And to me, what's been exciting and fun to watch is watching the athletes adjust their tactics each week, kind of, because we've been changing things up a little bit and how we run the races, but also I think their legs just telling them after the first week that, oh, that didn't work. That did not feel good. And I think this week we're throwing another little wrench by increasing the run goal pace for the 20 points. Do you think that's going to have a big effect on kind of the tactics this week?
Yeah, I think there are going to be some athletes who go for that maximum 20 points. Will it cost them in stage 3? We are going to have to watch to find out. My guess is there's going to be a bit more separation after stage 2, people really focusing on stage 3, saving their legs a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's fun though, because, we thought we knew how the tactics were going to be last week. And then once I think the run started, athletes were like, oh, I'm doing something totally different than I was planning on. So we, if all this sounds confusing to you, it's somewhat confusing. But I sat down and recorded a little kind of explainer to show you kind of what we're talking about with the points on the run and the 2 bikes. So let's take a little look-see at this explainer.
Z Pro Tri means 3 short races back-to-back, and this time around, that means bike, run, bike. Points are won for each race. The most points after 3 races wins the round. It's that simple. First up, it's a non-drafting hill climb mass start TT. Only on Zwift can the race of truth work like this. Everyone starts together, but they're all doing their own TT as we have switched the draft off. Everyone will get a feather power-up, and first across the line wins. Points are 20 through 1 awarded at the line. For race number 2, it's off the bike and onto the treadmill, and for the run leg, pacing will be key. Points will be awarded for hitting a series of finish times, and some will go all out for 20 points, while some will save themselves for the final bike leg. Back on the bike for race 3, and every week we'll finish in Crit City with a points race. There are points to be had every lap, 3, 2, and 1 at the KOM, then 20 through 1 at the finish line. The athlete with the highest total points after 3 races wins.
Well, there you go. There you have it. That's how it's going to work. And again, Sarah, we're starting off with the hill climb TT. And just like every week, we want to bring entertaining racing to everybody watching at home. But it is my personal goal to do what I can to make this as painful on the athletes as possible. And maybe having them thinking of them cursing me over dinner after the race makes me happy for some reason. So to help achieve that goal, we've started the hill climb TT this week is the Ochterbahn in Innsbruck. It's almost 9 kilometers, 426 meters of climbing, and it's significantly harder, I think, than the weeks before. But what do you think this race, this first TT, how it's going to affect the racing today?
Yeah, compared to weeks 1 and 2, this is a longer climb. So it's only as painful as you want to make it. So ultimately, the athletes who really want to come away from this first race of 3 races with the maximum number of points, they're really going to push that climb hard. And it's a long climb. You can do a lot of damage, both on yourself, but also on the competition. So it really is trying to get a sense of your own strengths and weaknesses. And if you are a great climber, you are going to want to really push it hard. But then again, it's longer. It's going to take a little bit more out of your legs for the subsequent 2 stages.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the athletes will end up looking at each other a lot because you're right. You got to do what you can to try to be able to put your best foot forward on the run, but it's also a race. So if the person you think you're going to have to compete against in that final point series race is in front of you, you need to try to get as close to them as possible, right? So generally, that's what I love about the TT, the non-drafting TT in Zwift, is that tactics become part of it, and the tactics are already kind of being played out on course. So let's go down or go over to Innsbruck, where it looks like Matt Hansen actually is in the lead at this point with just 4-second gap over Kenny V, and then another second over Anthony Costas. But Matt Hansen, Sarah, I think both of us were a little bit, not surprised, but excited to see this long course athlete who's so great over the Ironman distance, showed how well he did in Daytona over that length of a run, but is not afraid to just sink for the event course specialist. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so last week it was pretty nice to have a interview with him after the first week, and he said, listen, I made some mistakes. I learned a lot about Zwift racing. I'm going to come back and apply those lessons that I learned, and we saw that last week. There was a little bit of separation on the 3rd stage where he missed that front group, but he definitely is improving week after week. So I think he's going into today wanting to prove that this Zwift racing stuff, yeah, it's pretty short, it's sharp, it's different format than he's used to, but he's a really good athlete. He's a great cyclist, great runner, and he wants to prove it today. He's definitely coming out strong and trying to put himself in a good position for the rest of the day.
Totally. And what I love about watching Matt race, especially in this series, is he's smart. He knows that there's points, the points are only worth so much, and you don't need in this race to win by 20 seconds. And in the run, you don't need to be 20 seconds in front of the next guy. But he's always trying to go as fast as he can. He's trying to get as much out of himself as possible. So he's kind of putting the tactical game in the backseat to him trying to get the most out of himself, which is fun to watch.
I think we have to keep in mind that this racing, it serves a different function for different athletes. There is money on the line. That's something that we don't talk about. So it's a nice little bonus for these athletes when they have a great day. But an athlete like Matt Hansen is thinking of his next Ironman and using these sorts of races to get himself into really, really good shape. So for him, if he thinks that just going as hard as he can over the 3 stages is going to make him a better, stronger athlete over the long run, he's going to do that. He's playing some of the tactics, but ultimately, my guess is he probably just wants to come away with a really, really hard training day.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's perfectly said, and that's certainly what is cool about the series. And you can try to get your most out of yourself in your training, but you're also racing some of the best athletes on the planet. Matt Hansen racing somebody across the pond, Anthony Costas, in second place right now, pushing 6 watts per kilo on this 12% grade, 3.7 kilometers to go. Those are a lot of watts, Sarah. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's a lot.
Those are some pretty big watts. You look at the top 3; they're all pushing about 6 watts per kilo. They're going to be feeling that. They are not holding back right now. But Anthony Costas, he is a master of the Zwift racing. We've seen him time and time again really understand himself physiologically, understand the racing, and put himself in an amazing position to just, frankly, last week he dominated the competition. I would love to see things be a bit closer this week, but credit to Anthony. He knows how to do this racing incredibly well, and he is making the guys kind of elevate to his level.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. He's definitely the one that's in the driver's seat. I think maybe the run pace getting increased might make it a little harder for him and all the other athletes, especially after this climb. I think the watts per kilo average on this hill climb TT are going to be a lot higher than we've seen, or a fair bit higher than we've seen the first 2 weeks. So that's going to have an effect on the run too. But on screen right now, Kenneth Vanderdrijs out of the saddle. And pushing pretty darn hard, 6.8 watts per kilo at the moment, out of the saddle. He's trying to stay as cool as he can. He's got his jersey open, but Kenneth is absolutely getting after it. So he's 9.4 seconds behind Matt Hansen, but only 1 second behind Anthony Costas. And I think he knows that Anthony is one that he's going to have to look at. And as we go a little bit further down, we're going to see Adam Bowden in 4th place. Right now he's at a little bit softer spot, putting 5.6 watts per kilo, but he is 19 seconds behind our leader, which is still Matt Hansen. But Adam Bowden, he's been one that's definitely factored in all the races, and one thing I noticed, you can see it here, nobody's going too crazy yet, but he has had a great little support crew every time he's done the race.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fun to get an insight into these athletes' lives. Try to see what their setups are like, what their support network's like, and he definitely has a pretty nice little group cheering for him. And so Adam did really well in the first race last week, the uphill time trial. This is a very strong, well-rounded athlete. Coming from a run background, so we expect to see him do really well in the run today. It's going to be interesting to see whether he goes for that faster pace or not. So we have Christian Hogenhaug here. He's an Ironman athlete. Kind of burst onto the scene in 2019 with the win at Ironman Hamburg. Pretty comfortable position. He does have Jackson Landry just right behind him. So it's always nice for these athletes to have somebody to key off of. The two of them are probably going to be using each other to really maximize this stage. Get the most amount out of themselves possible without burying themselves going into the next 2 stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the screen right now, Jackson Landry, he was able to win the first week's racing. He's always one that He has a lot of experience with racing, so if he's got good legs, he's going to do well in that points race as the final race of the day. You can see him getting some info from his support crew there on screen. He's got all the fans available in the house, blowing on him to try to stay as cool as possible. But Jackson Landry currently in 6th place, just 2 seconds behind Christian Hogenhog. And I think it's important, Sarah, to point out that, kind of as you said, being able to play off the other athletes is super important, just like you would in a non-drafting portion of a triathlon. But it's important to, I think, remind viewers at home, because it's maybe hard to recognize, but there is no drafting here. Even if they're within 10 meters or 2 meters, we just have at Zwift here, we can just press the button that says no draft. So all these athletes have no ability to draft, and I wouldn't say you're getting a huge draft off of a 15% grade. Anyways, but now just a little bit further down, it's Florian Andert and Aaron Royal that are 55 seconds back. Aaron was able to move up a little bit near the end of the race last week, and we'll expect to see him try to do the same as his climb gets near.
Joining us last week, so we have a mix of athletes across all different disciplines. An athlete like Aaron, he is more of a short course specialist who does longer, some half Ironman distances. The camera is on Florian Anger before, and that's more of an Ironman distance athlete. So it's just cool to see side by side different things, mixing it up on this virtual platform. We have athletes who are more pure duathletes, like Kenny V. He's more of a duathlete turned triathlete. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, different experience levels with Zwift, but here they are just meeting all across the world, meeting virtually on Zwift, throwing down, getting fitter, hopefully coming away with a little money and some fitness in the bank.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron Royal still on screen, but as far as the race goes, up front, Sarah, Matt Hansen is kind of putting everybody else over his knee a little bit. He's got 18 seconds lead over Kenneth Vanderdrijs, who's 5 seconds over Anthony Casas, which, all these Anthony is a very powerful cyclist, but the combination that makes him so great on these races, or how the series has panned out, is he is very good at Zwift tactics, but he's very light too for the kind of power that he puts out. So for me, and I don't know if you would agree, I'm surprised to see him in 3rd place, 21 seconds behind Matt Hansen, considering kind of his light build and how he normally performs on climbs.
Yeah, what we series a few months ago, and then stages 1 and 2, is that Anthony really likes to go for the time trial, that climb, and put distance into people. That's the last few kilometers when it kicks. On paper, this would be sort of stage where Anthony do exceptionally well, but Matt is absolutely crushing it right now. He's still holding 5 BPM, so he is working hard. He's going to feel pretty tired at the end of this, but he also knows that he's very strong. With 1 point, potential 2 points in the second race. He goes into 3rd race in a very nice position. That's lost some points last week, so maybe he's thinking, we're to advantage the first 2 stages and try not to get some of the sports on the stage 3 maybe come away with a win.
Yeah, and he's playing his strengths. He knows, or he doesn't have a bunch of confidence in his points racing ability, just because tactically that's not what he's used to. And Matt has this raw power on the bike that I think because he came onto the sport but I mean, we've seen it in bikes as good as any person referred to as an Uber biker is. But to me, and it stands out, Matt Hansen probably the only people I've seen in racing, and I want to say it was the Innsbruck ring, but he was dropped. Like, he got dropped by 5 or 6 seconds to a group of 20 people, and then made his way back. And that you can't do that. That's something one person can do. So he's showing off that raw power here. He might get off the gas a little bit because, again, it's just points. It's not a time thing. So he's going to get 20 points regardless if Kenny Veef's a half a second behind him. 1 second behind him right now. Matt Hansen, 4.6 watts per kilo, leading the race. He's going to come across the finish line for Kenneth Vanderdrice.
Yeah, so Kenny V in second place has been clawing his way up. He has a gap. He can't cover that. It looks like we have our top three pretty well settled for our first of the day.
Yeah, important to note, Sarah, we do have
our first race of the day.
Yeah, and important to note, Sarah, we do have Sepp Odin and Ronnie Schildneck out on course. For technical reasons, they're not showing up in real time in the race, but they are certainly racing, and they're putting out, right now I'm looking, Sepp as 7.6 watts per kilo, so he's trying quite hard. So we will, after the race is done, be able to put them in the results, so we might see things shift a little bit afterwards. We'll let you know as that goes. But Matt Hansen across the finish line first, and then we just had Kenneth Vanderdrice, and it actually looks like, as I say that, it's quite possible Sepp Odin had the second fastest time across the finish line. Again, I'm kind of speaking out of turn there, but I think that could be possible. So Kenneth Vanderdrice across in third, and Anthony Costas in fourth. And right now we see Adam Bowden most likely, as I said, provisionally coming across the finish. We put Sepp back in the results for his technical issues. And we will get you caught up with the top 10 results for the men here in a bit. But right now we are down with the women's race, as it looks like we have Meredith Kessler, but it looks like she's chasing somebody still. Sarah?
Yeah, it looks like Ruth Astle is in where she loves to be, at the front, pushing hard, throwing down some big watts. If you tuned in last week, Ruth wasn't able to join us on week 1, but she was able to join us on week 2. And, this is such a strong, powerful athlete, and just loves racing, loves throwing down on Zwift, and really blew up the race on the 2 bike legs. So my guess is she wants to do the same today. You get the most number of points, try to go in 20 points stage 1, 20 points stage 3, and keep herself in contention for a great overall finish today.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think we all love kind of the way she races. She's never one to be shy about the fact that she wants to try to win. She wants to win over the biggest names in the sport, and right now she is in front of some pretty huge names in the sport of triathlon, including Beth Potter in second place, 5.5 seconds back. Meredith Kessler, 13 seconds back. Melanie Moore is in fourth place, 15 seconds back, and Emma Plant Brown is in fifth place, 15 seconds back. And I'm I'm not surprised. I'm continually impressed by Ruth, obviously, on the screen. Look how, her laser eye focus, she means business. You never doubt if she cares or if she's trying her hardest. She's pretty serious. I love it.
Yeah, she's out of the saddle right now, just absolutely giving it. So they're about halfway done with the stage. This is a woman who understands her power, understands what she needs to do to go over this stage as efficiently as possible. No question, it's full gas. She's going to be emptying the tank, but she knows that she has 2 more stages after this, and is going to moderate her efforts accordingly. None of these athletes, you're really going to see them blow up per se. There might be a slight diminishing of power if they got it slightly wrong. But for the most part, they really understand what they need to do to cover the stage as fast as they possibly can.
No, I think you're right for sure, and I think Ruth has always done that, always given her best. I think right now, though, looking back, if I was Ruth, I would be wanting to continue to try to get as much gap as possible, because paying attention, part of being a great athlete is obviously athleticism, but it's also paying attention to your competitors and how they race. And if she has been paying attention, she's noticed that when the hills tend to get steeper, and certainly near the end of these hill climb TTs, Beth Potter seems to have another little bit of a gear, right? So I think, and as I say that, Ruth opens her gap to 8 seconds from 4 seconds over Beth Potter. But Beth right now putting 5.8 watts per kilo out of the saddle, up a 14% grade. She is certainly, I think, today's overall, because having this long and this much climbing in the TT is going to put her, obviously, in right now she's in second place in a podium position. But then the fact that we kind of bumped up that goal pace for the run for 20 points, she's not going to have as many of her competitors alongside her in that point category, with it being a little bit faster.
No, absolutely. So Beth Potter, former, she is an Olympian for GB and represented them at the 2016 Olympic Games in the 10K. So on paper, obviously, has extremely good credentials for the run. Probably has been licking her chops. Can't wait to go a little bit faster on the run. Probably wishes we could let her go even faster. But, it's February. It's a long season. We want to make sure that everybody gets through this healthy and not too upset with us, even though you said that you don't mind if they get mad at you. We do listen to the athletes. We had a couple who wanted to push the pace a bit more in the run, and we're letting them this week. If you guys want it pushed even more, let us know. And we listen to feedback from fans and from athletes. So on the screen right now, we have Meredith Kessler. Meredith did extremely well last week. There was it looked, points-wise, it was a three-way tie for first of the women in contention. It ended up going to Lucy Charles Barclay for the win for last week, but Meredith, did incredibly well, just very consistent across all three stages. Very experienced Zwift racer, so I think she is coming in today wanting to replicate a performance like last week's.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. As we see on screen, two women chasing Meredith Kessler, Melanie Moore, and Emma Plant-Brown. Melanie Moore out of the saddle, pushing 280 watts. And just a quick question, and tell me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but to me it's surprising with having an athlete like Meredith Kessler on these short races do so well, as you said, tied on points with some of the other athletes, short course specialists, Lucy Charles Barclay. But Meredith is known as kind of that diesel engine, just strong, can go all day long. Is there a point in these sprint races, especially with 3 races back-to-back, where strength can overpower speed because it's just so painful? Like, you just have to have the muscular ability to recover. Like, it no longer becomes about being fast. It becomes about, like, who can handle getting hit with a hammer, and then try to run afterwards, right? Like, your legs just feel terrible. Like, does it start to, like, lean more towards the long course athletes?
Well, I think all of these athletes have really pace, and you need that to be able to put together 3 stages in a row. We're not seeing the absolute anaerobic beast. None of these women base that allows them to push hard. Right now, somebody like Melanie Moore pushing over 5 watts per kilo, and she's going to bounce back for stages 2 and 3 and be able to tap into that high-end power. It really is an indication of their fitness, their understanding of the platform, and just their all-around athletic ability.
Yeah, absolutely. As we were looking at Melanie Moore, I haven't seen her sit down, I don't think, yet in this uphill TT, the hill climb TT, and right now she's at 4.5 watts per kilo, 70 RPMs, and she's got a nice little setup there. She's got she looks over at a couple different bottles of water or drink mix she's got there, maybe a little bit of caffeine in one of those, but someone who doesn't need any extra caffeine this morning seems to be Ruth Astle. She is well in the lead, 166 heart rate as she gets within 2.5 kilometers of the finish line. She now has 14 seconds over Beth Potter, so definitely in a more comfortable zone for Ruth, as far as it doesn't seem like Beth would be able to ramp up or go into another gear and overcome Ruth. But Ruth definitely, as you said, she was super aggressive last week in the bike races and was able to get a lot of points. And she continues to need to do that this week, especially with kind of how we've mixed up the points for the run as well. It's a little bit more weighted to the quickest of runners, especially being someone on screen like Emma Plant-Brown and Beth Potter. But Emma always has. She's got the low light situation going. She's got, some cool vibes. I imagine the music is pretty entertaining. What do you think she's listening to?
I don't know. Right now, it could be Halloween music for all I know. I can't see anything with that. Jared, you gotta get on that. Her husband Jared needs to turn on some lights so we can see her lovely face. I am sure she's absolutely giving it right now.
Absolutely. We see Jackie Herring on the screen. She is pushing quite a bit. Let's see, what does she have? 4.4 watts per kilo. She is 50 seconds. She's 50 seconds behind the leader, but only 6 seconds behind Melanie Moore, who is in 5th place. So Jackie Herring pushing the effort as much as she can, trying to get those points and get herself in a position to score as many points going into that run as she can. Kelsey Withrow is right behind her. She is just 2 seconds behind. We'll get a little shot of Kelsey Withrow trying to bridge up to Jackie Herring. But this is a great shot as we go up the Octobahn. You can see all the women in a row, 5 or 6 women up the road trying to get as many points as they possibly can in this hill climb TT. Jackie Herring on screen, giving it her best.
Yeah, Jackie has been doing the series very consistently strong. Just flies under the radar a little bit, but she's such a well-rounded athlete. Really good and experienced at the Zwift racing. It's been fun to see her progress and mix it up with these women. She's known as being a very, very strong runner, but she can really ride a bike too, as we've seen in the Zwift Tri-Series.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, sometimes it's important to take a step back and explain, just in case, and hopefully this isn't the case, but just in case any of our viewers are watching these athletes on screen and they're almost all out of the saddle. They're obviously all pushing a lot of resistance. So if it's possible that anybody watching hasn't ridden on Zwift, maybe give it a shot. But looking at the screen, what you might not know if you're riding at home without a smart trainer or, kind of just staring at a wall, you won't realize that it's 13% gradient. These women are riding as if they're on a 13% gradient. You can't sit down and spin 90 RPMs up 13, now 14% gradient. So that's why we've seen literally every time we've been on screen, these women are out of the saddle, and that's because they are climbing. They are climbing quite a pass in the Octobahn and getting, again, I think it's 1,400 feet about of climbing. So pretty cool what they're able to do, obviously with the smart trainer and Zwift and kind of the courses all across the planet that we're able to cover with that technology. And right now on screen, Amelia Rose Watkinson, one of the most consistent racers that we've seen in the series. She's great over all the disciplines, but very, very phenomenal bike rider and bike racer. We saw her have a great bike split at the last 70.3 Worlds we had in Nice. So she clearly knows how to go up a hill on a bike, and she's doing a great job of it here today.
Yeah, Amelia Rose has really broken through as a pretty new pro the past couple of years. And it's fun to see an athlete like this mix it up right now on Zwift. So it's interesting to think that this is a woman who is in summer right now. I'm sure it is hot outside. She could be steaming in her garage, and then we also have athletes in Canada just absolutely freezing. So it is so fun to think about these athletes coming from all over the world, mixing it up on this virtual platform. Amelia's in a country where they do have some in real life racing right now, and she's been taking advantage of that, doing really well. This is such a nice way for her to break things up a little bit, do some short, sharp racing, and really make it hurt. Right now on camera, we have last week's winner, Lucy Charles Barclay. She has the fun lighting. She is pushing hard right now. So this is not normally a position where we see Lucy, but you have to keep in context, these athletes are doing this, a lot of them in conjunction with some really, really big miles. So this is, for some of them, they are focusing solely on the Zwift racing, really wanting to make it count. But then an athlete like Lucy, she probably had a massive weekend and she's fitting us in the week. And you really have to contextualize over the course of the week what else they're doing. And it really makes you appreciate that they're doing this on top of everything else.
No, I think you're right. I think that's great of you to say that, and it's certainly true. But what also makes athletes successful is realizing the surroundings, especially in a race like this that's tactical and has points involved. So if you're Ruth Astle, Beth Potter, Meredith Kessler, you're looking down and you're saying, oh man, Lucy Charles is in 9th? That's an open door. Like the win the last few weeks has been something that obviously, Meredith Kessler was tied for points last week, but it seems like Lucy Charles Barclay has a pretty good grasp on being able to win these races, and her being in 9th currently is an open door for somebody new to try to do it. So Ruth Astle, if she's able to have a good run after getting full 20 points here today, or in this first stage, she could put herself in a position to, kind of lean on her strength in that points series race. But yeah, on screen right now, Ruth Astle, great performance. She's off the gas a little bit now as she has 18 seconds over Beth Potter with 350 meters to go. She can take it easy as she goes across the finish line. If I was Ruth, I'd be spinning high RPMs. You try to get ready for that run, loosen up a little bit, maybe get some snacks in. Yeah, she's getting a little more casual, but she definitely nothing casual about that bike ride. Her 20-minute power after this maybe will go up. She's definitely putting in the good work. So Ruth Astle, 115 meters till she comes across the finish line as first place over Beth Potter, looks to be just within 20 seconds behind.
Yeah, again, these athletes don't get bonus points for winning by more. It's purely based on where they finish in today's stage. So you can win by 1 second and get 20 points. You can win by a minute and get 20 points.
Yeah, no, I think that's important to continue to point out, because it does become tactical. We keep saying that, and I say these athletes, they're still going pretty hard till the very end. Man, Beth, you got 20 seconds over Meredith. Let's soft spin it in. But again, as you said, every athlete, they're searching for fitness. They want to get confidence going into the season. And somebody that certainly should have good confidence going into her first race of the season is Meredith Kessler, with the kind of performances she's had over short distances. And right now, Emma Pallant-Brown over the finish line in 4th. Melanie Moore going to be coming across the finish line in 5th place. So there's your top 5 in the women's uphill non-drafting TT, with Melanie Moore coming across the finish line in 5th. And we are down back with the men's race already underway on the run, and they're cruising along. And let's see who is where. Let me get my data up here, but right now we got Christian Hogenhag. Looks like he's in first place, pushing the effort for the men.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun to see who decides to go with that 20-point max. The next pace category down is 16 points. But that, there's a big difference in how hard you have to run, obviously, between the 16 and 20 points, and it becomes a tactical decision. But again, as we saw last week, some of the athletes probably went in with a game strategy, thinking they were going to run one pace. Saw a lot of their competitors going for the 20-point category and said, "Yeah, I'm going to have to work a little harder than I thought on the run."
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they kind of have to adjust as they go. But right now, Christian Hogenhag running at 19.5, 19.7 kilometers an hour with a pretty good little lead. But it does still seem like, Sarah, like there's a lot of those men that are going for the top points. Anthony Casa seems to be running that pace still. Maddie Troutman seems to be, as well as Reese Barkley and Adam Bowden. Matt Hansen just about there as well. So give you the kind of the pace that they're going for the top points. 20 points, it's going to be 19 kilometers per hour. The 16 points is going to be 18.5 kilometers an hour. and 17.5 kilometers per hour for the 12 points. And in time, that's going to be 16.5 minutes for 20 points to 17 minutes for 16 points. So all these athletes are starting out looking like they'll be able to get under there, but I think we might start seeing the athletes fade a little bit as we get a little bit closer to the finish line.
You know, for some of these athletes, this is pretty. It's pushing, but it's not too uncomfortable. If they do some shorter racing, they are typically, you know, going much faster than that. But that being said, they just finished a really grueling time trial. They're going to have to turn around and go for a points race after this. So you really have to keep it to context. You know, don't let the avatars fool you. It's always a little tricky when you see them just cruising along their avatars. Makes it look so easy. These men are working really hard right now, and hopefully we'll get some picture-in-picture to be able to contextualize exactly how hard they're working. We'll be able to see their heart rates and them just sweating all over the treadmills.
You're right. The avatar makes it look pretty easy. For sure, as we see Christian Hogenhag and Anthony Costas kind of swapping back and forth on the lead. They're both just a little bit over 19 kilometers an hour, but a large group of athletes behind that seem to be underneath that time standard that we have set as well. But yeah, absolutely crushing it right now. Anthony Costas, you know, he lost a little bit of points. He ended up, I believe, in 4th place, getting 17 points in that first race where he's used to 20. So I think maybe he went into, you know, he could have gone into today being like, okay, I'll get 20 points in the first hill climb TT, and then maybe I'll try to save the legs, getting 16 points in the run, and then really go for what he's great at in that point series race at the end. But he left some points on the board in that first hill climb TT, so he's definitely going for it in the run, which I'm surprised to see Anthony Costas at the front of this run race.
Me too, because he is so confident in his points race ability, his tactical understanding. You would think that maybe this is an opportunity to sit back, see what the other men are doing, but it's clear that he decided to go into the stage and want to really prove something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Jackson Landry out on the boardwalk as well. Let's take the opportunity to take a look at the course that the athletes are out here running on. Jackson Landry looks nice and comfortable. He's got some snazzy sunglasses on, looking smooth. And
except for his facial hair.
That is true. It's a little bit different. I'm sorry. We're actually going to go to a little interview, a little talk back and forth I had with Jackson Landry earlier in the week about his experiences in the racing so far this series.
You, Reese Barclay, and Anthony Costas probably have more experience Zwift racing than probably most of the rest of the field. With that experience, how do you guys beat Anthony Costas?
It has to be very tactical if you do want to come ahead of him. And I mean, I've beaten him in sprints, like I beat him in the final sprint today and a few others, but you can't make any mistakes. So like, for example, in the sprint banners today, I probably went for it on about 4 out of the 6, and 2 or 3 of them I got points, but a couple of them I was finishing fourth, and that's not getting me any points. So, you know, if you're going for the sprint banner, you have to go for it all in or nothing. So that's something I got to keep telling myself, because the voice in the back of your head is telling you to save it because you have more to come. But really, it's not that much harder if you go all out, because then you just get a little bit more of that kind of recovery when guys are catching back up. So it just, you can't make any mistakes. And, you know, I've gotten pretty close, but I'm just going to need to be a little bit better on each of those sprints next week to try to come out on top, at least in that third race.
Man, it's not that much harder if you go all out. I don't know if I believe that tactic. Certainly not with my legs. Maybe with Jackson's legs, it's a little bit more successful. But he's done a great job. He's doing phenomenally.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember hearing that Jackson was on a suboptimal treadmill, shall we say, last week. So I'm sure that right now he's be back home on a fast treadmill, able to run a bit faster and mix it up with the guys. You know, right now he's 16 seconds back from Anthony Costas, really in the mix to get some good points here in stage 2.
Yeah, was had to quarantine on his way back from travel at a friend's house, and of course, I'm sure when you said that, friend at home is like, "Oh, why you got my treadmill under the bus like that? It's a perfectly nice treadmill," and it is was a little harder with best athletes on the run on that treadmill than apparently it is on the one that he has in his setup at home. But man, he's getting after it. He looks like he'll be under that banner if he holds the pace for the 20 points. So turns out if we raise the bar, the athletes just raise the bar as well. So Anthony Costas at the front of this race at this point. The person I'm surprised isn't at the front, maybe it's because his legs are tired from the uphill TT. He's decided today isn't the day I'm going to run as fast as I possibly can. But Matt Hansen, he's 11 seconds back. Again, it doesn't really matter. This tactical, like ideally, if you were trying to save your legs as much as you can as much as you could for the points race at the end, the ideal scenario would be finish 1 second under the time banner. So I think right now Matt Hansen's a little bit closer to that than he's been in the past, but he's running shoulder to shoulder with Adam Bowden, who is, as you've said before, Sarah, one of the best runners in the sport.
Yeah, both of these athletes, two phenomenal runners. This is where the tactics are capable of running the fastest pace. Absolutely, but they know that it will potentially cost. So right now they're banking. All right, this is comfortable for me. I could go faster. I know that I will with 16 points, and I feel good going into stage 3 that I'll be able to produce a little bit more power, be able to contend for more sprints with a bit more in my legs.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're coming up on 2 kilometers to go. They're just under 10 minutes at this point. And again, that time cutoff for the 20 points max is 16 and a half minutes. As we see on screen, Reese Barclay running, man, he looks super smooth. 162 beats per minute. He's definitely locked in the pace that he feels he's capable of running for the next up to 7 minutes. So he's rolling along pretty well, and he's just good at the point series race at the end, but also had a phenomenal run too. He's just well-rounded and certainly one of the more experienced Zwift racers, and he showed that again last week.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch race last week. He was consistent across all 3, but like you said, just in the mix for most of the race. And I think that he comes back saying, all right, there is room for improvement. Let's mix it up. Let's see if I can position myself even better for an overall result after stage 3.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's doing the best he can. It's helpful for him, talking to him and Lucy Charles Barclay, his wife. They're able to help each other out on tactics and obviously encouragement along the way. As we see Sam Proctor, encouragement as well, as he runs at 164 beats a minute, and he's got a pretty solid pace going out here as well today. It looks like he might be in the second group, but he's to be able to cross. But right now they're 11 and a half minutes in, so 5 minutes to go for those athletes to try to break that 20 point barrier and get max points. And it's shoulder to shoulder again with Anthony Costas and Kenneth Van der. Kenny, I think he sees glory maybe in today. I think he knows he's got a couple points over Anthony Costas. He wants to make sure he doesn't give any up, but these two are the racers that you want to see battling it out in that last race, in the points race, because they are both super dynamic. They both aren't afraid to go for the jugular against their competition in a race like that point series race.
You've been talking up Kenny V, as you call him, as the most aggressive rider, and it would be fantastic to see that again. Really going hard, trying to get the field to break up. We've seen that. It's really been a race of attrition, the third stage, and it's all because of athletes like this who just go across the sprint line and keep pushing. And it's really great to have athletes like this in the mix, trying to shake up the field, obviously trying to get the best result out of themselves possible. Possibly, like you say, get a little bit of glory along the way, but really just racing for the love of competition.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they love it. That's what I think any athlete, certainly they find a way to, do something that they love, but they definitely want to push themselves every time they can, as we see on screen. And pushing as hard as he can. He's fallen out of the lead, but again, doesn't really matter tactically as long as he gets under the finish line banner in 16 and a half minutes. So he's got about a little over 3 minutes to get 1,000 meters. I think he's pretty close. I think we might see some athletes finish just outside of that, but I'd imagine they're pretty good at their calculations, so we'll probably see a fair bit of this top 10 get under those 20 points. But Kenneth Van der Drijs, that athlete that we've talked about in the past, super aggressive, also has a lot of duathlon racing experience, and he's going to be one that is able to have a run like this and then have a great bike ride afterwards. But he's in the lead 2 seconds over second place with his Christian Hogenhag, and then third place, Aaron Royal, early in the morning for Aaron Royal. So we're super stoked to see him come and race with us. And Anthony Casas in fourth place and Reese Barclay in fifth.
So what do you think, Matt? Did the changes in pace shake things up as much as we had hoped?
I don't think, it didn't in the run. I think we expected maybe people to make that, and I think we might see something different in the women's race. Maybe the men are just like too overly competitive to think about tactics all the time. I think we can still see a great effect of it when it comes to the point series race at the end, because the TT to start was brutal, and then going for this faster pace on the run, I think it's still attainable, but there is going to be something that happens physically to these athletes that push that pace. So what do you think? What do you think?
I think, like you said, that the proof will be in the pudding. We'll find out after stage 3 how much this has hurt. And if it doesn't make an impact, maybe we'll nudge it up for week 3. Let us know if you're listening right now. We do pay attention to the YouTube comments. Matt and I are, a little occupied, but our team definitely understands what you're interested in. We also want to say, if there are athletes you really want to see out, your favorites are not joining us, please tell them that you want them out there on the course, mixing it up. Matt and I don't have a lot of pull with them, but if you all say to them, all right, Lionel, it's time to see how you're going to do against these guys, maybe he'll listen. Maybe your other favorites will listen.
Maybe. They certainly won't listen to me. I think, Sarah, you have a better chance of getting some weight thrown around as far as that goes. But there we go. So Kenneth Van der Drijs, 50 meters to go. He's 16 seconds round. He is definitely going to make it underneath the band. 16:15, which means there's going to be some athletes behind, maybe out. But Aaron Royal comes across the finish line under the time cutoff, as does Christian Hogenhag. 6:23. Behind Reese Barclay comes across the line. 29. I think that last one was Troutman, maybe, that made it. We'll have to go to the official results, but I think possibly, Sarah, Matt Hansen and maybe Adam Bowden just barely out Jan van Berkel as well. So very, very tight to that 20-point barrier.
Yeah, just by a second or two. If you're an athlete in that position, you're just probably kicking yourself because you went the same effort as it would have taken to do the 20 points, but you end up with 16 just by a little slight miscalculation.
Yeah, absolutely. On screen right now, we've got Melanie Moore and Meredith Kessler. in first and second, running side by side early in this race, just a half a kilometer in. There's a lot of work to do for that 20 points still up for grabs, but awesome to see those two athletes pushing the pace at the front. And for those of you watching along, there is a goal, if wherever you're watching on, that you can maybe help us out a little bit on for next week for the point series race. We're going to have a couple different options for power-ups. So it's going to be up to you guys what you think it should be. We're going to have 2 power-ups available for the point series race. The options are Anvil and the Feather, or Burrito and Arrow power-up. I don't know, Sarah, which ones would you pick?
Ooh, I am going to vote for Burrito, Arrow. No, Anvil Feather.
Oh.
Anvil Feather. Classics. You can't go wrong with the classics.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd be able to disagree on something, but unfortunately not. I'm with you. The Anvil is just to be able to push the I weigh a bunch button seems awesome. I think that's cool. But right now on screen, 2 athletes pushing the pace: Meredith Kessler and Melanie Moore over the 17.5 kilometers an hour. You can see our points down on the left side of the screen. Shows kind of where everybody was in the points ranking. But right now there's still, again, Sarah, not that many athletes voting or opting to go for that slower run pace. There's still, looks like 5 athletes in that 20 points category at the moment.
No, absolutely. I would say that we had expected things to break up a bit more. If I do want to shout out Meredith Kessler pushing it on the run this year. You know, this is an athlete who's normally thought of as a swim bike specialist. She's done something with her run training to really elevate her run, and is running paces that honestly I probably wouldn't have expected. Melanie Moore, you know, she's an extremely strong runner. Not a huge surprise. Beth Potter, obviously not a surprise. Helen Jenkins, one of the most decorated ITU athletes of all time. So we have women who are running that fastest pace that are a bit of a surprise, and other ones that seems about right. But they are absolutely going for it. So I'm looking forward to see what happens on stage 3 and whether or not it costs them a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that is where we're going to see the differences for sure. But question, and again, I keep asking these questions, and they're kind of weighted questions. I clearly am asking them, assuming to know your answer to a certain extent. But do we think, that was a long question, do we think, a long intro to a question, do we think that the treadmill offers the ability for some of these athletes to have a breakthrough like that, right? Like if you're mentally tough and mentally strong and you press button 17.5 kilometers an hour, and all your only job is to tell yourself, I can't fall off the back of this thing, does that leave the opportunity open for an athlete like a Meredith Kessler to maybe run faster inside than she necessarily could outside, as we see Heather Jackson racing on screen?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few different variables involved, you know, real life versus treadmill running. You know, my guess is all these athletes are running flat right now. They're not doing at an incline. So normally, if you want to kind of replicate the real world feel with wind resistance, you would go up to 1 to 1.5% gradient to equalize things a bit. But there is that mental component where you just put it on a certain pace and you just go with it, and it's just pure turnover. The mechanics run are slightly different than it is on the road or on the track, so we do see that come into play with certain athletes and their strengths and weaknesses. If you're more of a strength-based, turnover kind of athlete, the treadmill is a really good tool. If you're more of a bouncy, responsive runner, then you may find it to be a bit different for you. You know, may not be as beneficial as it is for those kind of strength-based runners.
Yeah, there you go. I'd agree with that. I think that's a great observation. On screen right now, somebody that doesn't need any help with their running or any motivation to run any faster than she currently is capable of is Beth Potter at the front, definitely comfortably at the front at this point. 5-second lead over Melanie Moore and Meredith Kessler pushing the pace. Helen Jenkins in fourth place, Sky Monch in fifth, and Lucy Charles Barclay, again, a little bit further back than we necessarily expected or have seen her. But again, all that really matters is kind of the points that she's going after and whether or not she can attain those. I was able to sit down and chat with Lucy and Reese last week after the races. So let's check in and see what they had to say about their racing experience here at the Pro Series.
Were you surprised at all on the run when you got like a little bit in how many women were going for that faster pace?
Yeah, I think, you know what, the standard on the run is so strong. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to have to go all in and get max points. Like, I was kind of asking for the sick bucket at halfway, and I was like, I know I've got to hang in here because I need to get max points because so many girls were going to go and get those 20 points. So, yeah, absolutely brutal. But I think that's the bit I was most happy with tonight, was definitely the run part.
Reese, is there a benefit to having your partner there with you, or at times do you wish kind of you were on your own?
I think it depends how Lucy's race is going. If she's not doing so well, then, yeah, I just keep quiet and don't say anything. But if she's doing well, then I'll normally just lend a little bit of advice if I can. But yeah, it's difficult at the moment because obviously I'm concentrating on my race, so we just sort of passing by each other and saying well done every now and again. But yeah, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Love it. Those two are awesome. And I will say the sharing the earphones thing to me is a little reminiscent of Lady and the Tramp, which I feel like after Valentine's Day is appropriate. But those two are awesome. It's great to see them enjoying this racing together side by side, even though, like I said, I could not have somebody that close to me when I'm going that hard. It's
Matt,
it's too much.
You're dating yourself. I mean, do you think Lucy and Reese were born when that movie was released?
No, I mean, it's not like I saw it in the theaters either. Come on.
Right now on screen we have Sky Monch. She's in a very strong position, comfortably running 17 kilometers per hour. It looks like she's going to easily get the 16 correct me if I'm wrong, which puts her in a nice position for the third stage. And we didn't see as much of her in stage one, but she's a very experienced Zwift racer. I expect that she'll be mixing it up a little bit when in the last stage of the day.
Yeah, I think you're right for sure. Helen Jenkins looks so smooth. I mean, it's so great to see her back racing and healthy leading into this 2021 season. She's an athlete that has had some amazing performances in the past and is one that from the outside looking in seems to be she carries herself in a way that you can tell her peers enjoy racing her, and she seems like she treats everybody with respect and is somebody that I've never seen anybody upset that Helen wins a race. So it's good to see her out performing well again.
Who's the competitor you most like racing against? Helen's definitely top of my list. She beat me more times than I beat her in the IT racing, but honestly, it almost feels good when Helen beats you because she's just one of the kindest human beings possible, and you know that awesome. She and Mark her husband are this incredible team. They put everything into performance, and she has really been pushed through some serious adversity as an athlete, and remain humble and gracious all the way.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. As we see Beth Potter on the screen, racing at the front as well with 12-second gap over everyone else. Word from the course, we kind of saw actually pause there a little bit on the run, and it sounds like the reason that she wasn't performing as well as we've seen her in the past is she's been a little bit under the weather, and just like Lucy Charles Barclay, she tried as hard as she could and gave it her all. And in the middle of the run, it sounds like it was just a little bit too much for her. So that might be all that we see out of Lucy Charles Barclay. But again, that just means a door is open for her to take a week in the Z Pro Series. And right now, Beth Potter is putting a pretty good bid in to be that person. Because if you look at the points and who performed well in that first race, Ruth Astle is not in our top 10 right now, so she is not in at least the first pace group for points and possibly the second. So it's possible Beth Potter will go in with 8 more points than Ruth Astle after this run as well. So that they'd be rated at 7 points going into that final stage. But Meredith Kessler in third place, so still a lot of racing. But Beth Potter definitely looks like she's in a pretty good position, Sarah.
Yeah, it's absolutely exciting to watch an athlete like this transition from running to triathlon. She had some nice wins last year in a World Cup in Spain, if I remember correctly. But just seeing her trajectory and realizing that she's just at the beginning of her triathlon journey and putting in year after year ahead of her, and being able to see her at this point in her career mixing it up with a veteran like Meredith Kessler, who, you know, again, you talk about these women who are very giving of their sport. Meredith is one of them. She's always open and willing to give advice. Also a fierce competitor. You know, this I think she is looking to be in the mix for the win today. Beth and she will have a nice little competition ahead of them. Some other women are still going to be in the mix, but it is going, I think we might have a bit of a nail biter like we did last week.
I think we might, and I think Beth Potter showed that she can be very good and competent in those point series races in Crit City, but Meredith Kessler definitely has more overall Zwift racing experience from doing some WTRL racing also, but let's not count out Melanie Moore at this point either. She's one that could certainly win the lion's share of the points in the point series race and try to take home the 20 max points, and anything can happen out there. And she looks like she's running comfortably too. So I think that's the other difference, is who is running quite hard to reach this time cutoff of 18 minutes and who is running comfortably. And I think that we won't be able to know that obviously till the point series race.
Yeah, Melanie did extremely well in the first or the last series of 2020. She dominated the series, and it was really fun to watch her. She hasn't won week 1 or 2, but she's going to be in the mix, I think, for this week number 3 of our first 2021 Zwift Tri Pro Series.
Yep, there you go. And again, Sarah, you've mentioned, feedback is encouraged. So if there's anything fun that you think we should think about for the next series, put that in there. But if you haven't voted already on the power-ups for next week, please chime in there as well. Again, I'm a anvil and feather kind of guy. I think that'll mix up the tactics, maybe encourage some breakaways maybe over that KOM banner as well. But right now on screen, Beth Potter's not thinking of power-up. She's thinking about getting across that finish line. She's got 2 minutes and 20 seconds to get 500 meters. I think she's going to have plenty of room to be able to do that.
And we do have an update. So Ruth Castle, who was doing extremely well after just dominated the first race of the day, she is out because of some treadmill issues. I don't know if we're going to be seeing her jump back into the third race, but it's going to certainly make things a bit more interesting.
Yeah, certainly will. And definitely for her, she was able to show her fitness in that first race and get that competitive juices flowing a little bit. Hopefully she'll be happy with that, but unfortunately run for it's asked unfortunately. But on the screen right now, Beth Potter, 230 meters to go to make time cutoff. So she is maybe right now Sarah, Beth Potter is telling us that we could probably raise that or lower the pace if we wanted to, and she'd still be able to get there. It looks like she's going to come in closer to 17 minutes than 18 minutes. But a lot of time here, I'm looking at the time gaps right now, and it looks like we're going to have a few athletes just outside of that goal for the 18 minutes as well. But Melanie Moore, Meredith Kessler, and Helen Jenkins all look like they'll be able to make underneath. Comes across the finish line in 17 minutes and 22 seconds. 38 seconds.
That seems pretty comfortable for her. It's definitely a learning curve with the Zwift, but I think Beth has learned a lot of lessons, and it's going to be fun to see her mix it up with some sprints in the third race of the day. Coming across the line right now is Melanie Moore. Again, another experienced Zwift racer. All these women are going to be in the mix for the overall win today. It's going to be pretty exciting to see them duke it out across the intermediate and final sprints.
Yep, it looks like Meredith Kessler and Helen Jenkins made it underneath that time, and it looks like Sky Monch is just going to be a little bit outside of that, but she's got some time to go to make that 16 points, and then we're going to see some bigger jumps. It looks like she might be the only one in kind of that second group, as we see Paul Finlay, Jackie Heron, Heather Jackson, Kelsey Withrow, and Amelia Rose Watkinson a bit further down. But we see Sky Munch come across the finish, 5th place, but pace group. And in our third pace group, we're going to see, as we see on screen right now, is Paula Finlay, who is training down in Tucson and running side by side with Heather Jackson.
Yeah, it looks like there may have been a little technical difficulty there for Paula. Hopefully she gets back moving with her treadmill. Her technical team is there in the room with them, and she can make that time cut off. Right now, we see Heather Jackson. So again, talking about the context of some of these athletes training, Heather throwing down training, right? Posting some incredible workouts. So remember, these athletes are doing racing in the middle of the week and then putting in massive miles, massive kilometers the rest of the week. Just some really impressive work going on. People laying down the base for a really big season to come.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think and most of these athletes, or a lot of these athletes, are gearing up. They'll be going after Challenge Miami just in a few weeks' time. So definitely, priorities are making sure they put in, the aerobic work and the base work for the entire season. I would say in a lot of cases they wouldn't be racing on a Wednesday if they were prepping for their first race of the season, but luckily enough for us, they've chosen to be a part of our series and do that and work their training around it, but certainly prioritizing training. So there you go. There's the women's race, and we see Beth Potter first across the finish line, taking the 20 points, the max points available for her. So, Sarah, any big surprises? I mean, surprise for me how many women were in that front group.
I guess I was actually surprised that the men's field didn't break up quite as much as the women's. There was more separation with the women's field with the run than the men's.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, like Anthony Casas being in that front group was surprising to me as well. And I think maybe it was one of those things like we saw last week where the original plan was thrown out the window after the first race, or when they saw their competitors kind of pushing that pace a little bit faster.
Yeah, you'll have to do some debriefing with the athletes afterwards and get dirty.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at points so far and kind of where things are stacking up going into our last race of today, being the points race. So right now it is, I mean, he might be my favorite just because of the way he races. Sorry, everybody. I love you all equally. Kenneth Vanderdrijs in the lead with 38 points. Anthony Costas going for those 20 points, stayed in second place with 37, moved up. Matt Hansen with 36 points. For one, a shocker that he did not get the 20 max points. If he would have gotten the 20 max points, he would have been in the lead going into the last race. So a bit of surprise there. Christian Hogenhag with 35 points. Jackson Laundrie in shooting distance with 34 points. Adam Bowden, 32. Aaron Royal, also 32. Sepp Oden dropped down a little bit after the run with 31. Matt Troutman and Reese Barkley round out our top 10. If I'm looking at people to watch there, I'm seeing Jackson Laundry is 4 points away, and he has the ability to do well in that point series race. Ronnie Schildneck with 27 points, Jan van Berkel, Florian Anger, James Kunema, and Sam Proctor. A little surprised on James's first leg being that uphill TT. I'd be curious to see what happened there. James is one of the bigger athletes. So watts per kilo wise, theoretically, maybe you would think he's not as good at a hill climb TT, but being that much of a climb. But I think something maybe else might have been going on, because James generally would have a stronger performance in that. So he'll be trying to get as many points as he can in that final point series race, which he's done very well at in the past, to try to move up the final standings.
Yeah, again, there's a lot going on with these athletes. It's almost easier to have one or two massive races a year, but trying to string together 4 Zwift races in a row is really hard. Sometimes you get sick, sometimes you're overtraining. So the ability of some of these athletes to be able to string together 4 great races, it's very exceptional.
Yeah, 4 races and 3 races within those 4 races, right? Like, we're talking about the technical stuff and like getting everything ready. Like, there is a lot that they have to handle to be able to race well in this series. And it's been fun to watch, but I think it's going to be a tight race for the men. If my memory serves me right, it looks like there was maybe 4 points that separated first place all the way down to 5th place with Jackson Landry. So it could go any which way. Certainly, if there's anybody in there that's going to try to break the field apart a little bit, as we saw in the first week of this racing, it can just annihilate the points and kind of put things, kind of upside down. So I'm excited to see what the racing is going to be like down in Crit City. And again, we're going to start off with our men first, and then we'll see our women finish out the day. But okay, who's your pick? Who's going to win the whole thing in the men's race?
I'm going to say Anthony, just because he is so good at the tactics. You're going for Kenny V, aren't you?
I mean, okay, my heart says Kenny V, but sorry, Kenny, we don't know each other, but it's fine. Jackson Laundry, I think, is going to be the big mover for sure. But yes, I want Kenny V I want him to mix it up, because I know Kenny knows to be able to win, he's got to have to be very aggressive. So it's going to be great racing. Can't wait to see it. I think we're close.
Yeah, no matter what, it's going to be it's closer points wise than it was going into the third race last week.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think the hill climb TT and that run pace, I think we are going to see it blow up. And obviously we saw things blow up that first week because we had athletes that weren't able to run, and we still allowed them to race. So they were able to break things up. But I think we might have a similar effect with some athletes that just didn't totally damage themselves in that second race. And it's quite possible, I'm kind of giving Matt a hard time I wasn't giving a hard time, but the fact that he lost 4 points in that run, it's possible he's trying out a different tactic. Let's run and see if what he considers a weakness in the points race is maybe only a weakness because his legs are a little bit too fried. So I'm curious to see what Matt's got in store for us, as obviously the rest of these athletes.
No, I think you make a good point. So Matt, his downfall the past couple of weeks was that third stage. So maybe he is being really tactical, deciding that going in a bit fresher means that he might not get dropped. He has a better understanding of how the dynamics work with the drafting and going after the sprints and everything. So trying to really throw down on stage 3 might have been his strategy all along. Only one way to find out. We have to watch stage 3.
You're right, and we are almost there. I know that's what you're thinking at home. You guys love looking at your faces, but let's see the athletes. But we are on a schedule, so the athletes are transitioning again. We each have 3 races each week that these athletes have to do: a bike, then transition to a run, then transition back to a bike. So we're giving them proper time to be able to do that. Maybe have a little snack and in between. But we're about 45 seconds out from the last race of the day on our third week of the Z Pro Tri Series 2021. We're going to go down to Crit City here in just a minute and see what happens. But again, there are 3 points up for grabs, 3, 2, 1 each sprint around the banner, and then grabs theoretically for the finish line sprint. Again, whoever has the most points will win 20 points for the day, and then the second most person will get 19, and then all the way down to 1. So the max points is 20 points. See any huge swings, but it's definitely still weighted to those athletes that have paced themselves properly and have really good racing tactics and have that ability. I mean, there's something different, Sarah, to a 20-minute TT like we saw in that first stage, and then max effort sprint, recover for 5 seconds, go hard again, another max effort sprint. So let's go down to the pens and see what's happening as we get ready for our crit race. And they are off, Sarah.
Yes, we're going to have a fun time ahead of us. If you've watched the past couple of weeks, you realize that the action is nonstop. So you have athletes going after all the intermediate sprints, attempts at breakaways. The course is dynamic. They really have to pay attention, stay on top of things, watch their competitors. There is no soft pedaling between. Now, this is a hard effort from start to finish, and it's incredibly taxing both mentally and physically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you got to be focused. And again, I think we talked to some athletes. I think it was Paula and Heather. It's just like you got race nerves, getting ready for these races, because you have to be just as prepared as you would for a normal race, and even more so in some cases, just because of the technical things that you have to kind of get out of the way as we see our athletes go through the little bit of a rolly section. If my memory serves me right, which it rarely does, but I think it might in this case, we're going to have this long straightaway before we get to our first sprint after this left-hand corner. Right now at the front of the group, we have Anthony Casas, James Cunnama, Kenneth Vanderdrijs. The power is going up, and it looks like James Cunnama going around that corner in first place, full watts as much as he can, but it looks like over the top with a gap actually is Jackson Laundry, over 11 watts per kilo as he gets those first points. And talking to Jackson, as we saw in that interview with Casas second, Sepp Oden in third, he thinks, what, might as well just go all out. It's not that much harder because you actually get to recover a little bit, I think is what he was saying, but it sounds pretty hard to me.
It looks like we even have separation after the first lap. That we have a few men back. It looks like a group of 7, and then we'll see. There are only so many times you could bridge a gap, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. Just even if you go through the first sprint, you're a second or 2 back, you bridge it. It's that cumulative load. So what we've seen in the past couple of weeks is that they'll start off a big group, shed 1 or 2 athletes each lap, and by the end, it's probably 6 or 7 men. Same thing with the women, just going for that final sprint where all the big points are, but along the way, there are fewer athletes in contention for the intermediate sprints. So it's in their best interest to just keep pushing hard, pushing the pace, not let up, and hope you lose athletes every single lap.
Yeah, and there's this elastic that you see continuing to get stretched each lap. Oh, it stretches, that it comes back. And right now, Florian Angert is in a world of pain because he was a second back. Then it was 1.5 seconds. Now it's 2 seconds. Now it's 3 seconds. So he's trying as hard as he can, close to 5 watts per kilo. But it looks like Florian Angert and Sam Proctor actually are our first 2 victims to the pace of this super fast group at the front, as we see Matt Hansen driving the pace again as he's trying to make up for those 4 points, quote unquote, lost or maybe given away in that run race, as he went kind of in that slower pace there as they hit the straightaway into this turn to the sprint.
Yeah, it's hard because you have to balance, trying to position yourself well, but also not being at the front too much. So it's a really fine balance for the athletes
And
positioning going into the sprint.
Yeah, there we go. The aero power-ups are gone. That's how you know the sprint is coming. Sepp Oden at the front. Anthony Casas in second place, battling with Jackson Laundry as well. It looks like it was Sepp Oden across the line, maybe in first, with Anthony Casas in second. Let's see official result. No, sorry, it was all upside down from what I thought I saw. Jackson Laundry, Sepp Oden, and Anthony Casas, and they are stretching their group out again. Sarah Adam Bowden, James Cunnama, and Matt Troutman a little bit off the back.
It's that rubber band effect. If you've ever done some crit riding, you've experienced it firsthand, whether virtual in real life, and it hurts a lot to be at the back and just see that group right there. Sometimes you can catch back up, but you have to put in a huge effort to bridge to the group. So, I feel for those athletes right now. Adam Bowden, James Cunnama, some other athletes behind trying to chase. Again, these are exceptional riders. They'll probably bridge back up, but every time you do it, it takes a little sting out of your legs.
It takes a lot of sting out of your legs, for sure. It does look like those two athletes were able to get back on. Actually, Matt Troutman still 5 seconds back. So definitely some more athletes drop, but it's 10 in our front group now. That did not take long, Sarah. 2 laps in, and it's down to 10 already. And again, it's Matt Hansen at the front of the group, going under the start finish banner before we go into the rolly section. So I think what you were saying before was very smart. You want to be at the front of the group, but you don't really want to be pushing that wind going into the section, as we lead into the sprint.
Right. You don't want your nose in the wind. The best place to be is part way back, not all the way at the very end, because if you're the last person going through for the sprint, then the high probability things are going to get strung out of it. It doesn't mean that they can't stay with the group, but if you could try to come across the line in a nice position, it makes it more likely you're going to be able to stay with that front group there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I see some spikes in Matt Hansen's power as we go into this long straightaway. We got some aero power going early. Sepp Oden goes around to the front with James Cunnama in second place. Anthony Casas, as always, in the mix. Kenneth Vanderdrijs as well. Looks like maybe Sepp Oden, somebody trying to come across over the shoulder at the end. It looked like James was trying to come over the shoulder of Sepp Oden. I don't think it happened. No, it did not. Sepp Oden with another sprint. Another 3 points. James Cunnama definitely trying to make up some ground. Gets 2 points. Anthony Casas, as always, still right there. Kenneth Vanderdrijs needs to start getting some of these points if he's able to overtake Anthony Casas at the end of this race. But it's still stretching out. Again, we got Adam Bowden is hanging off the back, 1.7 seconds. You see him around that corner chasing. Sarah, is he going to get back?
Oh, that's going to be a tough one. I think this is going to be the pattern that we see the rest of the race. So we're about halfway through, and every time we may lose a rider or two. So don't be surprised if we end up with a group of 6 or 7 by the end.
Yeah, and I think part of why we're seeing that is someone like Matt Hansen is using his strength as this raw power to tire out everybody. Like, he's not letting people slow down to 3.5, 4 watts per kilo in between these sprints. He's going right back to the front, pushing 5.5, 6 watts per kilo as Christian Hogenhaig to hard pull at the front. So he's softening them up as well. And Sarah, as a group gets smaller, like right now, this front group is only, as Adam Bowden still chases, is only 9 athletes. So there is a big difference in a group of 20 and how you can sit in versus a group of 10, and how if somebody attaches a less suck on to get back to the front, right?
You're absolutely right. It's easier to get exposed the smaller group is. If it's 20 people, you might get strung out, but there's a good chance that you can just kind of the opposite of accordion effect. The accordion gets brought back in. Whereas they talk about the rubber band snapping, and that definitely happens more readily in a small group.
There we go, and we see all the aero power-ups that knows the sprint is just around the corner. James Cunnama with a little bit of a gap going into the sprint. It might have been a little early. He's got a gap. Sepp Oden in second place, trying to bridge up with Kenneth Vanderdrijs and Anthony Costas. James Cunnama trying to get to that line. He barely gets to the line. It looks like in front of Anthony Costas and Sepp Oden. And yeah, that's it. It was James Cunnama, Anthony Costas, and Jackson Laundry, for third point. So Jackson scoring some points as well, continuing to push the power over the top. And we do have another little gap. The elastic or the accordion continues to stretch. Christian Hogenhag 2 seconds back with Reese Barclay with him. So right now it's a group of 7 with another 2 athletes 3 seconds back now. It's blowing up again.
It's blowing up again, and it's these riders at the front. See we have Jackson Laundry, we have Anthony Costas riding aggressively, going after all the sprints and not letting up. And then Matt Hansen has positioned himself well through all the sprints and just keeps riding through to the front. It's a I'm sure some of these athletes are wishing that they hadn't got caught up at the back of the group and got shot out the back, because it just looks like we're down to 7. It's going to be a hard ride for anybody who's not in this group right now.
Oh, for sure. 4 kilometers to go. This also is an opportunity for an athlete. As you said, there's less places to hide. You could get 1 or 2 athletes to jump off the front, maybe go breakaway. I think you know who I'm rooting for to go for a solo breakaway. Not that I root for everybody. I want everybody to do well, but I love watching Kenny V go for the aggressive move. But right now, again, the athlete I think is making the race, we're not seeing it in sprints, but every time in between, Matt Hansen at the front of the group, pushing. Right now, he's at 8 watts per kilo, pushing the effort up these rollers, not making it easy on anyone.
Now, it would be interesting to see what their average wattage is going to be after the stage. I would not be surprised if Matt Hansen has the highest average wattage, just because he keeps on sticking his nose out in the air for the long sections, really pushing hard.
Agreed, for sure. As we see the aero power-ups in that left-hand corner, I believe that's Aaron Royal at the front at the last second over Kenneth Vanderdrijs going into that corner. Anthony Casas, Sepp Oden trying to come around him, but it looks like Aaron Royal, gets the 3 points on that one with Anthony Casas and Sepp Oden. Also, you're going through the points, but as this has happened, it's a very smart defensive move. Be across the finish line first, because guys are getting spit out the back. If you're not in the front, you have to get dropped, and it's stretching out a little bit. James Cunnama, Kenneth Vanderdrijs had to kind of push themselves to get back on the group. So there's a lot happening right now, Sarah.
No, that's a great point. You can almost not afford to go for the sprints at this juncture, because if you are just riding through this same wattage, not trying to go for it, you're going to get spit out the back. It's too small of a group to be able to risk that, especially the way these riders are riding after. So keeping the pace going, pushing hard, they're not letting up. They only have about 2 kilometers left, and all of them want to maximize points, especially with the there's the most bang for the buck. So some of the athletes we haven't been seeing as much in this group, these points are pretty much dominated by the same few athletes. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys are sitting in and thinking, I'm just going for the finish line sprint. I'm not going for the intermediates. I'm going to make sure that I stay with the group, but I'm really going to turn myself inside out the last 200 meters.
Yeah, for sure. You can't get points at the finish line if you're not with the group at the finish line, right? So I think that's got to be your priority. One is to make sure you're there, save as much as possible as we see these athletes go through the rollers. And shocker, who's at the front of the group again? Matt Hansen pushing 5 watts per kilo up the rollers, out of the saddle at the moment as they go into this long straightaway last intermediate sprint. So let's remember, we're going to have the straightaway left-hand corner, 3 points up for grabs, and then it is going to be on going into that final sprint, Sarah.
No, it's going to be fast and furious. There's no room for recovery between the 2 final sprints here.
Nope, not at all. And we're coming up on it. We see the arrow power-ups. That's how you know Aaron Royal goes after it first. Gets a little bit of a gap, over 10 watts per kilo over Jackson Landry. Kenneth Vanderdrijs is behind with James Kunema. Looks like Aaron Royal hit those max points over Vanderdrijs, but it's splitting up already. James Kunema a little bit behind with Matt Hansen. Anthony Costas 1.5 seconds behind. So if these guys push the pace and really stick to it, we could see these two athletes break up the whole field.
I don't think that's necessarily going to happen at the point, but I liked where you were going with it. It is great to see somebody like Aaron Royal just showing himself at this point of the race, racking up some points, mixing things up. So we have this group of 7, only 500 meters to go, and it's going to be good.
It absolutely is. We got Kenneth Vanderdrijs at the front with Aaron Royal, Sepp Oden, Matt Hansen at the front right now. It's Matt Hansen making a move, 7.5 watts per kilo, really going for it pretty early. That's a tough one to hold that long, but he's got over a half a second gap on the group right now as they're all trying to bridge back up. James Kunema pace almost a second behind with Anthony Costas. They're coming up around Matt Hansen into the sprint, and at the front it is Matt Hansen still at the front. I think it was sorry, I was confused. That was a lap rider that we saw, but it might have been James Kunema that came over Matt Hansen just at the finish line with Anthony Costas, Sepp Oden, and Jackson Landry out there. Kenneth Vanderdrijs and Aaron Royal in 6 and 7. So we'll get kind of that final result here on the board. But again, I think I was lapped rider, so that was Matt Hansen. Almost had it. Looks like he got kind of rolled just at the last second by James Kunema.
No, I would have to say that Matt Hansen, we've seen him progress week after week. This is definitely his strongest showing for the third race. And I think he may have done a really smart decision in going a little bit easier for the run. That being said, some of the guys who did go for the 20 points were in the mix for some of those sprint points. So it's really got to be very, very close points-wise.
We have the points coming up, but one thing I've noticed, I've got a little data sheet here that shows the watts per kilo. Guess who had Matt Hansen had 1 full watt per kilo more average than James Kunema in that race, and James won the race in the end. So you were right. He was well far and above the strongest athlete as we see on screen as far as watts per kilo. That's huge. Over a half a watt per kilo more than anybody else in the top 10. Pretty good call by you to call that, and a lot of good work by Matt Hansen.
No, he was aggressive. It was fun to see athletes mixing it up, trying different strategies. We have another week after this to see whether they're going to mix it up even more.
Yeah, and looking at the points I have in my head, I think I know who was able to be consistent across the 3 and get the win. I'm going to say again, and I think I'm right. Yep, Anthony Costas with 26 points. James Kunema makes a huge jump with that point series performance in the end after not scoring that many points in the hill climb with 25 points. Sorry, these are overall points for the points race, not, I don't believe, the overall standing. So that's the end of the points race. So Anthony Costas will get his 20 points and James Kunema will get 19, but that will move him up quite a bit with Jackson Landry getting third most points. Will give him 18 points into the series of points for today. Sepp Oden with 24, Aaron Royal with some good sprints in 5th place as well, and Matt Hansen getting 19 points for his effort on the day.
The riding was exciting in this group. I think we're going to probably see something similar with the women's race. So the last couple of weeks, we've seen, again, that race of attrition, women being aggressive through that intermediate sprint line, pushing through, shedding riders every lap. I would put money on the fact that that's going to be the case today, because these women like to ride aggressively, just like the men. And they know that if there are fewer people in contention for the intermediate sprints, for that final sprint, the better off they are if they're able to stick in that front group.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the course design and kind of how we maybe changed the points a little bit for that faster run after that really hard hill climb TT to start this week in Innsbruck. You could see in the men's race, I think that had a lot to do with how things got blown up, and I think we'll probably see that in the women's race as well, as we see Kelsey Withrow at the front of the group. Kelsey is a great Zwift racer. She's a great racer on the road as well. She knows the tactics that she needs to be able to perform, and she always puts herself in a good position. We can see the points on the bottom left. Beth Potter with a point lead over Meredith Kessler, and we can see Melanie Moore still within striking distance, just 3 points out with Helen Jenkins and Emma Plant-Brown as they go into this first sprint with Meredith Kessler in the lead with Amelia Rose Watkinson, Emma Plant-Brown, as well as they go under the banner. It looks like Amelia Rose Watkinson maybe snuck around at the last. Nope, sorry, it was Meredith Kessler, Amelia Rose Watkinson, and Emma Plant-Brown in third place for our first sprint of the day.
Yeah, it looks like Meredith wants to really rack up some points. So right now there's 1 point separating her from the win going into this last stage of the day. And we saw her be very aggressive with intermediate sprints last week. I wouldn't be surprised if she's going for the same strategy. Just try to rack up as many as you can, because that was a very effective strategy last week. Made sure that she was tied points-wise with the three-way tie with two other women. And let's be honest, it helps to be experienced, it helps to be confident, and she has both of those things.
She certainly does, and I think you're probably right in the tactics that she'll take. Now, so the woman in the lead of the race, Beth Potter, seeing that you have so much experience, maybe she's listening to our commentary, maybe not. What advice would you give? What tactic, if you were her, what tactic would you use? Would you try to sit in, have the best final sprint, or would you try to go head-to-head with these women in those intermediate sprints?
Whoa, that's a tough one. So, I think Beth seems to really, for some of the intermediate sprint points last week, if I remember correctly, it seemed to work for her. She was tied for first, so why not stick to that strategy? Or you could try to mix it up and just do what I would call the Paula Findlay. As we saw from our previous race series, really just putting all your eggs in one basket, throwing down that last finish line sprint can be beneficial. Honestly, depends on the legs you have. So Beth probably is going into the stage not quite as fatigued as some of the other women who went for the 20-point category, just given the strength of her run backgrounds. So maybe you just go for everything because you're feeling fresh as a daisy. It's hard to put myself in her position because she's a different athlete.
She certainly is. Amelia Rose Watkinson with a gap going into that last left-hand corner, but Meredith Kessler looks like she comes around the top just in the last few meters over Amelia Rose Watkinson and Melanie Moore. So as they go into this cobbled descent, we'll see the points. Meredith Kessler with 3, Amelia Rose Watkinson 2, Melanie Moore 1. Things are breaking up, though, a little bit, Sarah. We kind of didn't notice until I didn't notice, until just now that it looks like Emma Plant-Brown has been dropped with a group with Helen Jenkins, Paula Findlay, and Melanie McQuaid all off the back. And Sky Monch is actually just a few seconds off the back, as well as Meredith Kessler and Amelia Rose Watkinson push the pace and make the other athletes come back to them.
Yeah, with Meredith and Amelia Rose Watkinson just really pushing the pace after that finish line. I mean, there was a nice gap. Just things were really strung out. Yeah. This group will regroup right here, so you have a nice little pack going. But every time they do that, it's gonna cost somebody from being able to stay in this pack. And right now we have a group of 8. My guess is they're going to continue that tactic of staying aggressive, pushing through that sprint line, and try to get rid of an athlete every lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And who do you think, small group that, as you've said before, kind of exposes athletes and is a little riskier for draft, who do you think in our top positions does this suit best? Like it seems like Meredith Kessler would do well in a situation with a small group like this. Am I wrong in thinking that Beth Potter would have a harder time, or hard to say?
It is really hard to say. I don't know how their legs are right now. Beth has improved vastly with the Zwift racing between the previous series and this one. I think she's getting more confidence, getting more experience with the racing. Probably has a nice person in the room with her, giving her some tips as they go along. It always helps to have somebody just give you little pointers and trying to think about how to maximize your power-ups, just so you can react without having to think strategically while you're just going all out right now. Because right now they are riding hard.
They are absolutely riding hard. I see some 8 watt per kilo spikes as they go into this corner in this intermediate sprint. Everybody's using their aero power up. It's Meredith Kessler coming around the corner first, with Melanie Marr on the wheel and Beth Potter in a podium position at the moment. Amelia Rose Watkinson moves through as well, though, as they get up and over that intermediate sprint. So it was Meredith Kessler, Amelia Rose Watkinson, and Beth Potter putting her nose in there for some points, as well as things break up again. Kelsey Withrow, Heather Jackson, and Sky Monch are 2.5, almost 3 seconds behind. Jackie Herring actually a further 2 seconds behind. So things are breaking up right now. Sarah, it's a group of 4 with a 3-second gap.
Yeah, Beth is in a great position. Same with Meredith. So these two women are separated by 1 point going our 3-stage race for the day. And it really is going to be, so right now Meredith is racking up these intermediate sprint points.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for Beth to counteract that. She's going to have to start getting some points on the board, and probably is going to have to win actually the final sprint to be able to beat Meredith. But we still have 3 laps to go. If Beth is able to best Meredith in some of these sprints from here until the finish, it's gonna be extreme close. It's gonna be close. Not that risky of a prediction, yeah. I would say.
Not super risky, but when it's a group of 4, it's kind of not a crit anymore, right? Like there's who's there and who is possibly a threat on each sprint. So it might lean a little bit more now to Beth in these sprints, because it's less about race experience, because you're not dealing with the draft of a group of 15 people and looking at all these other people you just have to look at the 4 or the 3 other women that are around you. And so now it's 5-second gap to the group of 3, Heather Jackson, Sky Monch, and Kelsey Withrow. They're trying to catch up, but even if they do, they're still, I think, going to get spit out the back again, as this group is quite strong that's at the front with a lot of power, with Beth Potter, Amelia Rose Watkinson, Melanie Marr, and Meredith Kessler. We are on lap 4 going in our intermediate sprint, and this is where the points are really going to start to matter. We see Meredith Kessler going to this intermediate sprint first with the air power. Amelia Rose Watkinson trying to come up behind her as well, with Beth Potter and Melanie Marr, but it looks like Meredith Kessler holds off Amelia Rose Watkinson and Beth Potter, and it's stretching out again, and Melanie Marr is a little bit off the back, but on that descent she gets right back on, and our group of 4 is still together.
Yeah, the fact that they have 4 of them and the next group behind them is 12, 13 seconds behind, it's unlikely at this point they're going to bridge that gap. Stranger things have happened, so don't quote me on it. But my guess is we're going to be seeing the rest of the points being distributed at the front ends between these 4 women, which means we have a very close race on our hands, but I'm going to tip Meredith Kessler for the win today.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I mean, it's not that risky of a call when you're almost 5 laps in. She's won almost every sprint, but I'll give it to you.
I'm not a
It's
risk
still
taker,
call.
Matt.
That's fine. No, it's not. I would say it's hers to lose to a certain extent at this point. But again, with only 4 riders, there's the ability for a counterattack. Again, they're all going quite hard, so we're talking about these tactics. But in the end, it's what your legs are capable of. But when there's a group of 4, the likelihood of an individual going on a solo breakaway and getting, intermediate points is a little more realistic, because a group of 3 doesn't have as big of a draft effect as a group of 10, right? So like going it alone is a little bit easier. And if you get dropped by a second or 2 on that intermediate sprint, it's actually not as hard to catch back up on that downhill, right? So it changes the tactics a little bit with this small of a group.
No, I think that's a really good point. We'll see if anybody listens to your advice. Who knows? My guess
It'd be the first time.
Right now, you are seeing white spots. You're going all out, just white knuckling it on the handlebars, just trying to get everything out of yourself with only a few minutes left to go on this extremely hard 3-race day. These women have absolutely turned themselves inside out for the last couple of hours while we're all just sitting here watching them.
I think you're right. I think the legs are making the decisions, not the head at this point. It's whatever you're capable of, you're going to do. Right now, Meredith Kessler, again, using that aero power up as we go into this left-hand corner with 2 intermediate sprints to go. Meredith Kessler looks like she's going to get under that banner before Amelia Rose Watkinson is able to bridge back up to her, but a very close one there. Meredith Kessler over Amelia Rose Watkinson, but Amelia Rose goes straight around to the front and holds that pace going into the downhill. Again, it's Meredith Kessler with the 3 points, Amelia Rose Watkinson with 2 points, and Beth Potter keeping in there with 1 point. And Melanie Moore is either struggling a little bit or she's trying to save herself a little bit for that final sprint.
We saw the previous Zwift Tri-Series, the last one of 2020. Melanie Moore is... So I wouldn't be surprised if she's just going all in for that finish line sprint. But then again, this is February racing. Who knows where she is fitness-wise? She's an incredible athlete. It's a long season ahead, however. So it is fun to see athletes at this point in the season and to be able to watch them over the course of the year. Watch them, the Melanie that we see racing right now, she's obviously extremely strong, but the next time we have Zwift Tri-Series, she's probably going to be back in the front end mix a little bit more, because she was pretty dominant last series.
She certainly was, and I think that's a great point to make. We're not making excuses for anybody, but that's the reality of how a professional athlete sets up their season. And just like the rest of us, they maybe take a little break over the holidays, but it tends to set things up for a good season. And again, as a pro athlete, you got to race well when it matters. And generally, especially in these COVID times, the important races or the races that matter most are more towards the end of the summer or into the fall. So here we go, just 1.7 kilometers to go, Sarah. 10K in this race, and it is Amelia Rose Watkinson, Beth Potter, Melanie Moore, Meredith Kessler in this top. And it's a tight race for the overall win today. Final 5 going into the last 5 kilometers as everything's up for grabs.
Final thought, I did not expect the group to be this small at this point. It really is probably a testament not just to how hard they're riding, but the fact that maybe the run took a little bit more out of people's legs than they would have expected.
I think that's a combination of both, but yeah, it turns out hard, then riding hard again is pretty hard. But here we go into that final intermediate sprint. Around the left-hand corner, it's Meredith Kessler again. She loves going into this first. Melanie Moore in second place, but you can tell by the way they're riding, they're setting up for this final sprint already. It's starting to stretch out. Beth Potter is actually a second back, Sarah, going into this descent. Well, she has enough momentum to make her way back into the points over Watkinson and Marr. Beth Potter 1 second back still with those three pushing the pace. And I think you're going to see Meredith Kessler go to the front of this group as she sees that gap. The easiest way to beat Beth Potter in that final sprint is for Beth Potter not to be around in that final sprint. Meredith Kessler with 650 meters to continues to push the pace. It looks like Beth Potter is not going to get back on. She has a 2-second gap. That's going to be really, really hard to make back up. It's a 500 meters to go into this final sprint with Amelia Rose Watkinson at the front of the group. Meredith Kessler in second place. Melanie Moore, they keep kind of rotating around. Now they're going to see if they have enough gap or they're safe with Beth Potter. It doesn't look like she's going to catch. Now they're going to try to maybe conserve a little bit and start thinking about making sure they can best the other two athletes that are around them. Arrow power-ups going pretty early. Amelia Rose Watkinson at front, Melanie Moore, Meredith Kessler. It's Amelia as we see Melanie Moore come around the outside into the last few meters. It's Amelia Rose Watkinson, I think, gets it at the end. I think it was, I have no idea. I can't even say who I think it was. Let's see what it was at the end, Sarah.
I think it was Amelia Rose Watkinson. So she's been aggressive on these sprints, but really threw down when it counted. But man, that was a nail biter between her and Melanie. They were duking it out. That made it an exciting finish line sprint for sure.
No, that was awesome. And you see Meredith Kessler, put in that effort to try to make sure Beth Potter stayed off the group, and it ended up only netting her one more point over Beth Potter. But in the end, I think that's to be important, and I think that might put Meredith Kessler in the lead as far as the final standings go in the end. But whether it was the courses that did it or the racing, but those women just blew up that group in the end. That's the smallest group I remember us Tri-Series come across the finish line in a crit race.
Yeah, group of three going for that finish line sprint is not something you typically would expect. My guess is Lucy Charles Barkley watched the rest of the race today, wishing she was feeling a little bit better. We hope we see her back there because that's the kind of scenario that woman likes. But credit to Meredith Kessler being aggressive, consistent, really had an incredible day today.
Yeah, no, that was awesome to watch. And now let's see how kind of those points in this final stage stacked up when it comes to the women's racing. Again, Amelia Rose Watkinson able to get that final sprint, 5 watts per kilo, as she comes across the finish line in 16 minutes and 18 seconds, with Melanie Moore and Meredith Kessler in the same group. And Beth Potter just barely kind of got caught off guard there, that last final sprint as Meredith was pushing that pace, got dropped and kind of in no woman's land there in 4th place, with Sky Mach coming across the finish line in 5th, with Heather Jackson, Kelsey Withrow, and Jackie Herring all forming that little chase group. And then we had Paula Finlay and Emma Pallant-Brown rounding out the top 10 in our points series results for today in Crit City. But yeah, Amelia Rose Watkinson really, really knows how to race these crits.
Yeah, it's fun to see her throwing down the sprint lines. It definitely seems as though she enjoys it.
For sure. And here we go with the points for the points race today, including all the intermediate sprints and the final sprint points. And Meredith Kessler with obviously the most, 4 more points than Amelia Rose Watkinson, who took the final sprint, with Melanie Moore in 3rd with 21 and Beth Potter in 4th with 16. I was going to point out, Sky is one. She never makes excuses for herself, and I'm rarely one to make excuses for other athletes, but I think she's the only one currently. I mean, she is at 7,000 feet, 6,000 feet in Park City. It's quite hard to race, especially in a points race with that kind of intensity for a long distance athlete at that altitude. So great work from Sky, holding it together and getting 5th most points kind of in this last race of today.
Well, I would say there's a difference between an excuse and an explanation. So I think if your power's a little bit lower because you're at altitude, there's a physiological explanation for that. But the fact
for
that
sure.
she's able to finish 5th in this stage today is pretty impressive. But overall,
she's
impressive racing from the men and women today. Definitely, I would say they upped the ante from last week, which only means one thing, Matt. Next week is going to be off the hook.
It is going to be off the hook. I'm pretty excited. Let's see how the men's overall standings kind of stacked up after this, and we'll go back to the drawing board and see if we need to mess things up for them again next week as far as changing up how things work. But Anthony Costas, again, comes across the finish line in first, and he kind of always does it a little bit differently. He got the max points on the run this time, didn't get the max points on the first bike ride as he's used to. Jackson Laundrie, again, different tactics. The first week he did so well because he ran easy and then was able to have a great point series race. This time he went for the 20 points and then had a good point series race at the end, coming across the finish line. In second, Kenneth Vanderdrijs, Kenny V, ends up in third place. Matt Hansen ends up in fourth place after having a great points race with 51 points, so 6 points off the lead for Matt Hansen. Sepp Oden, accomplished duathlete, as we know, in fifth place. Aaron Royal, Christian Hogenhag, James Cunningham moves up to eighth place. Adam Bowden in ninth, and Ronnie Schildeneck in 10th place. Solid performance for Ronnie with this field that's out here. Reese Barclay, Matt Troutman, Florian Anger, Sam Proctor, and Jan Van Berkel round out our top 15. And, Sarah, we're so used to it. We're just running through these names like they're just regular athletes that decided to come race with us. But these are literally some of the best athletes on the planet. So it's really a pleasure to be able to test themselves against all the other peers that they have out here, but on this platform and having fun with racing that puts themselves kind of out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm sure it was pretty painful, but I hope they had fun too. If they have any feedback for us, we're always tweaking, trying to make it. Matt says a little bit harsher every week. We think it's just more challenging. They love the challenge, let's be honest. And same thing to the fans. Thank you for being part of our straw poll. So it looks like our power-ups for next week are the burrito and the drafts. So we're going to be including those in. Can't wait to see what the athletes do with it. And we're on to the women's results. But give us feedback. We listen. Thank you very much, guys.
That's awesome. Now that's going to be fun to see the burrito being used out there next week. Here we go. The race points final. It was Meredith Kessler with 58 points over Beth Potter, 56. All in all, Melanie Moore, 54. But it was 3 points that separated Meredith Kessler and Beth Potter in the end in that point series race, and that was the amount that was needed for Meredith to get up and over. And so great performance. I mean, to me, again, impressed with Meredith Kessler being able to come race against some of the best short course athletes on the planet. As someone that I've trained with Meredith in the past, I would refer to her as a diesel engine. I would refer to her as someone that is very good at accepting pain and ignoring it over long periods of time. And she certainly had to accept pain and ignore it here, but it was much more sharp and short amounts of pain. So really impressive to see Meredith come across the finish line points wise in first place. Melanie Moore third, Amelia Rose Watkinson in fourth. Sky Monch able, even at the altitude, to come across the finish line in fifth in a tie, a four-way tie points wise with Jackie Herring, Emma Plant, and Helen Jenkins. So it's been tight racing through the overall standings with Heather Jackson and Paula Finlay racing side by side, finishing almost side by side. Just 1 point separates them in the end, with Kelsey Withrow in 11th. Melanie McQuaid finishes, our last official finisher, in 12th place, with Ruth Astle and Lucy Charles Barkley. I will say Melanie McQuaid put out a nice little Instagram post today that said, get on here and start heckling me. I need more heckling. I know I'm getting my butt kicked. Heckle me some more. And I chose not to heckle you today, Melanie, but maybe next week.
No, I love that. I love that athletes really want to engage with all of you fans, all the spectators. Please cheer them on. This is something they do. They put themselves out there for everybody to watch. So a little kind heckling, maybe. Do it with love, knowing that they are putting their best effort in week after week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just got word in my ear from producer that Melanie had a technical difficulty getting onto the run, or something happened, and she was able to jump back on a little bit late and cross the finish line. So that's why she had just 1 point. She would have been a little bit further up if it wasn't for that. But that's no explanation, Melanie. See, I didn't say excuse. I am still going to heckle you next week because you asked for it, and I forgot to do it during the broadcast this week. But next week, I will do it for sure. But love the personalities, and that's what's great about having these low-pressure races. I mean, literally, these athletes are in their living room or their garage or whatever, and they're able to try something different, and there's no pressure. They didn't have to travel anywhere. They didn't have to spend any money to go somewhere, so they can have, I think, maybe more fun, even though in some ways this racing is a little bit more painful.
Yeah, but they're still fierce competitors. So we find that part fun, racing hard, and just, I'm sure they're all in fetal position right now, trying to refuel, think about their next session of either the day or for tomorrow. But also just loving the pain. What's great is that it's not just for pros. If you want to jump in as amateur athletes, there are tons of racing opportunities out there in Zwift for you.
Yeah, there certainly are a lot of opportunities. There's a Zwift Duathlon racing league with the WTRL that's available also. So get on there and try to do a similar racing to you see the pros doing on here. There was some of our colleagues at Zwift did one of the first ones today, and it sounded pretty hard. I won't call out anybody specifically, but you know who you are. You need to step your game up next week. But really, if you haven't, give it a shot. If you got a treadmill at home, give it a go. It sounds like a pretty darn good time. But again, super fun racing, Sarah, and enjoy calling it with you. And I'm excited for our last race next week, but I'm a little sad. There's only one more left for this series.
I know. Well, we'll just have to do it again this year. What do you think, Matt?
There you go. Yeah. So, okay. Check us out. If you haven't, for results, we have our provisionals, but we got Zwift.com/ZProTry. That's where you get all your information on what's going on with the ZPro Tri series. But again, great racing this week. Great performance from the athletes. And of course, as always, great performance from you, Sarah. Appreciate you. You helped me out through this exciting racing.
Oh, we had highs, we had lows, but we got through it together, Matt.
We certainly did. And thank you all at home for watching along with us, and your feedback as well is always appreciated. So thanks so much. And until next time, until next week, ride on.